Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the June edition of the South Atlantic LCC's Third Thursday Web Forum. My name is Hillary Morris, and I work on Blueprint user support and communications for your cooperative. We'll be doing things a little bit differently using the MeetingSphere program today instead of the usual WebEx format. So I'll be doing some of the usual intro and updates just verbally instead of using slides. So this month is kind of a unique and interactive version of the web forum. We want to give you a chance to weigh in and have your say on the South Atlantic LCC's increasing focus on Blueprint promotion and implementation in the coming year. So Rua Mordecai, our science coordinator, is going to be presenting today on removing barriers to implementing the Blueprint. He'll start by giving an update on some ways that the Blueprint has been used, stories that we haven't gotten a chance to share. Next, guidance from the steering committee at their in-person meeting earlier this month on focusing this year on implementing and promoting the Blueprint. And then we'll get your thoughts on facilitating use of the Blueprint, both things that you might want to do, things that you might want staff to do, and things that you don't want staff to do, things we should stay away from. As we get started here, I just want to highlight these 3 barriers to action that came out as particularly important in our Blueprint 2.0 workshops earlier this year in March and April. Those are obviously funding, money, a key issue, politics and policy, political will, and then connections with urban communities, forming those relationships with local planners of all kinds. So as we get started here, we'll talk about money and then move on to those second and third bullets later in the discussion. You've seen these intended Blueprint uses a lot. This is the way that we envision as a cooperative the Blueprint being implemented. And Rua is going to tell you a story about the second bullet, bringing in new conservation dollars, and some exciting news that we have. So Rua, I'll hand it over to you.
So the story starts with the National Cohesive Wildland Fire Strategy, joint strategy between Department of Interior and the Department of Agriculture. So this came out in 2014. Actually, Jim Fox, member of the Conservation Design Team here, was kind of the lead on helping develop that strategy. And it prioritizes counties nationally for fire resilience. And so this strategy came out. And around about that time, then the organizations went back to Congress and said, okay, we've got this cohesive fire strategy. We need some money to implement. So that was the beginning of this program called the Fire Resilient Landscapes Program. It's actually called the Resilient Landscapes Program, but everything in the world is called the Resilient Landscapes Program, so I have to stick fire in there because it's actually helpful and specific. But so what happened was the Department of Interior got money from Congress to implement the strategy. So actually for staff and aerial support and actually getting burns on the ground. And the focus is on partnerships and landscape resilience. So big impacts, large areas, building resilience to the landscapes, having big measurable impacts over 5 to 10 years on the system, and trying to support implementation through large collaborative partnerships. And so fiscal year, so 2015 was the pilot year for that, effort. So they got about, I think in this Congress they asked for $30 million per year. They got about $10 million this first year, and they're hoping to get more into the program into the future. So line item in the budget. And so even before this went in, because of the work y'all have been involved in with the Blueprint and sort of a buzz we've had in the South Atlantic, even before this got officially approved into the budget, I've been on some calls with folks that at the national level in some of the fire resilient landscapes programs, just because of what's been going on in geography. It's kind of interesting. There's a few ecosystems where folks were involved, and a couple of cooperatives that were in sagebrush and in major areas. And the introduction I think I got on the phone is, and great stuff's been happening in the South Atlantic. So been in a little bit, fairly early on this effort. And so it did actually make it into the budget. This is a pilot year, so the first cut in it. And what they wanted to do is, instead of doing broader requests for a whole bunch of different proposals, what they decided to do is pick a few very targeted areas. Each agency put forth proposals within the Department of Interior, and it was sort of like, to give you an idea of scale, I think the Fish and Wildlife Service put forth 3 for the nation. But I was sure that there was a chance, all the fire dollars goes way out west pretty much all the time, but they were also going to be considering, the South and other places as well. So
Hey, Rua, this is John.
Yeah.
Just a quick question, if we can ask questions during the presentation.
Yeah, we got a small enough group. Feel free to just jump in and ask questions as we go.
Just a quick one. This is exciting news, interesting to hear about this, and I was curious how this differs from the Wildland Urban Interface Program that's been funded by DOI for the last 5, 10 plus years. Has a similar kind of connotation, going into fire adapted communities and trying to work with that interface around, structures and public resources. Is this similar, or does it just deal with fire landscape adapted systems in general?
My understanding from at least the memos and stuff that I've seen is that, at least from the staff nationally, one of the big differences is a focus on landscape level metrics and sort of bigger changes across very large areas instead of smaller projects. I don't know all the intricacies of the wildland urban interface, but I don't think this is as targeted at specifically wildland urban interface. It's trying to couple in the natural and the overall fire resilience over some pretty large areas.
Okay.
But there's obviously, lots of overlap in just conceptually.
All right, that's good. That's good. Just trying to kind of sort it out a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so then I went through, in this case, just like we've always talked about, sort of staff role and just providing some support and helping kind of amplify projects. Went and talked to folks in the Southeast region, share what the Fish and Wildlife Service in this situation, just asked, what are y'all putting forth on, proposals? Do you need any help? Sharing what I knew about it, trying to help make the South, basically the South more competitive in these pieces. And so folks up at the Office of Wildland Fire had suggested, hey, instead of taking one of the individual sort of longleaf implementation teams or a cluster of 1 or 2, let's actually propose the partnership area as the South Atlantic LCC geography, because we're competing with huge acreages and bigger partnerships out west. Let's just do the South Atlantic as a geography. And so in this proposal, the geographic area was longleaf within the South Atlantic LCC, basically. And one of the big pieces, one of the big challenges, and like I said before, even I've heard from the national, is, a big focus of this program was not just about burned acres, but about, going beyond just acres burned and more explicit outcomes and metrics beyond just the sort of acreage of burning. And so in the proposal, using the South Atlantic indicators and including some of the longleaf metrics, and use the state of the South Atlantic in the justification. Hey, we're a B in regularly burned areas. So on the outcomes and metrics side, that really helped elevate those different pieces. And on the fitting into a larger strategy for resiliency, which was another big focus in the review criteria of, well, how does this fit into a bigger strategy? How does this benefit waters, rivers and streams? How does this benefit other natural resources? Use the conservation blueprint as that actual connection into how it kind of contributes to a larger strategy. So that was in the proposal, and the proposal basically was looking at these priority pine areas, and this was back from Blueprint 1 when we originally proposed it. But areas that were also important in the cohesive wildland strategy, that was one of their review criteria, but also important in the blueprint itself. So what you're seeing here is the proposal was to have basically in the initial year staff and aerial support located at a series of different land units. A few of the longleaf refuges, Cumberland Island National Seashore on the Park Service side, but the project area would be supporting basically fire on not just on those lands, but on surrounding private, state, and other federal lands. So staff would be at these different places, but they would then work throughout the landscape. So this is kind of basically like potential area based on a 3-hour drive from any one of those different places. So this is, again, that was the initial proposal, knowing full well in the first year we're basically through most of the fire pieces, so a lot of stuff would be happening in next year as well through existing contracts. But the idea, getting some actual temporary staff, a little bit for training, and then aerial support that could be used across the whole region, so helicopter contracts and pieces like that. So that was the proposal that went forward, and they were asking for not just this year and next, but also they're trying to support some of these partnerships over the long term. So lots of good flexibility, lots of potential for moving forward in that, and really strong connection to all the stuff y'all have been working with as part of this cooperative, State of the South Atlantic, indicators, and the blueprint itself. And the excellent news is actually got some funding for the first for this initial period. So we're the only project in the entire eastern United States that got any money whatsoever out of this. So that was pretty nice. Got about $770K for the first year. I put in air quotes because some of it will be able to carry over to the next year. But there's really strong potential, and from what I've been hearing from other folks too, for continued support every year, provided this stays in the budget. So the intention is not just a one-time off, 1 or 2 year thing, but a full increase in the base funding of fire throughout the South Atlantic geography. This is also, like I said, this is our first explicit example of the blueprint helping to bring some funds that may not have necessarily gone to this area, and it's kind of pretty strong connection to a lot of the stuff that y'all have been working on. Okay, so that's my update on this. Plenty more in future blog posts and other pieces. Any questions about that piece before I move on to a few other things? And remember, *6, because you're probably already muted. All right, excellent. We can always you'll hear more. We can talk about this more into the future, but yay. All right, a second example. Now I want to move on to Blueprint 2 and talk a little bit about this, some progress so far on using the recently approved Blueprint to sort of help make certain proposals help show how they fit into a larger strategy. So again, this is kind of like amplifying existing proposals within our geography using the blueprint. And so already, as staff, been helping folks from South Carolina DNR and Georgia DNR using Blueprint 2 in some coastal wetlands grant proposals. So that's circling some of the general areas where those proposals were happening for acquisition. And what we've been doing, they were already kind of using the blueprint in the justification, and as staff, we've been helping them communicate a little more of the under-the-hood details about how they fit into a larger strategy. So, okay, yes, this is a big chunk of highest priority area, but going below that, what's the next level down? Why is it the highest priority area? So, this being, this section of maritime forest is, one of the larger unbroken tracts of maritime forest, and it doesn't have, roads bisecting it and things like that. So really trying to tell the story about how these individual parcels fit into a larger strategy. So we're working on making it easy for all of you to do those pieces, but at the same time, Hillary, Louise, as we all keep offering, if you want to use the blueprint in some of these uses, we've got folks here to help with those pieces as well. So those are two examples. So those have gone in for the coastal wetlands grants, and we've been using the blueprints and the indicators. to help communicate how they fit into a larger strategy. Okay, so that is another example, another update, I think one we haven't talked about yet on blueprint use. Now, on to steering committee meeting pieces. So the steering committee recently met earlier in the month to do the sort of approval of Blueprint 2. You've probably seen a lot of that stuff in the newsletter, and then start talking about sort of the next direction of where we go. The big outcomes, more effort on promoting the blueprint and supporting its use. So we're still going to work on improving the science behind the blueprint, work on a Blueprint 2.1 over the next year, improve some indicator models, improve it a little bit more, but more of the focus, not just us individually as staff here, but also steering committee members and others are going to be putting more of their time into supporting blueprint use, promoting it. And all the steering committee members committed to promote the blueprint inside and outside the organization. So they're going to be taking even more of a role on helping promote the blueprint. They set a metric for themselves to report back on them, each of their organizations using the blueprint. So they're going to be taking more of an active role in promotion, which is pretty exciting. And also, thanks to Matt, who's been detailing and is the South Atlantic coordinator here, a blueprint promotion strategy is in the works. So he's got a really strong communications background, and so right now we're gathering some of the feedback from you, from steering committee, from staff, and then working on an overall strategy for targeting our promotional efforts. All right, so that's the update on steering committee and just general direction over the next year or so. Any questions before we move on to a little interactive feedback from all of you? And *6 to unmute your line. All right. Excellent. Now we're going to move on to the next stage here. And Hillary, can you take everyone off mute just to make it easier?
Yeah, no problem. So let's see.
The conference is now in talk mode.
So we're in talk mode, but that means if you would just be sure to mute yourself on your own phone so that we don't get any background noise and echoes and all that jazz.
Or we'll just make fun of you while you're eating early lunch or something like that.
Little public shaming.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so next activity we're going to do here is talk a little bit about kind of get your thoughts on promoting the blueprint and also overcoming some barriers to use in the blueprint. So we're going to start with promoting the blueprint. And what we're going to do is, as you'll see up right now, you've got a series of bubbles here. And I'll run you through if you haven't done this already in MeetingSphere. So we have some questions related to promoting the blueprint. What would you like to do to help promote the blueprint? What would you like staff to do? What would you not like staff to do? What are some things you would not like to see happen in the promotion? And then just in other comments. Sometimes there's just something that doesn't fit into any individual bucket. And so you can go ahead and click on, there's a little sort of thing with the numbers. If you click on that, I'll go ahead and click on what would you like staff to do here. And you'll see at the bottom there's a little thing where you can sort of type your contributions and then add a little check mark to add it up. So I'll go on what would you like staff to do here. I'll add something. Okay, so now you have a what would you like staff to do. If you click on that, you can see that we've added a contribution there. So, and you can see what you'll see in those numbers will tell you how many ideas are in those different.
I really like that idea, boss.
You like that idea? Okay, good. right. So any questions before we get started? All right, so I'll let y'all go at it, and just feel free to add some ideas to, again, things you'd like to do, what you'd like your staff to do in promoting the blueprint, things you're like, well, I want to make sure we're not doing this in promoting the blueprint. So I'll give you all a little time, and if we don't see a lot of action, I might just start calling on people, so watch out. Good ideas out here.
So, Rua and Hillary, can I go back in and add? Oh, I see the pencil now.
Yeah, you click on the little pencil if you want to go ahead and edit things.
Yeah, and don't stress about typos.
That's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah, no one's going to call you out for typos. Great ideas. So we'll fill this into the larger strategy, and as you probably see, these are things we, an idea from staff is great, but ideas that come from you get the highest priorities.
I'm going to mute this. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, for those of you that for those of you that weren't in the steering committee meeting, if you want to see the what would you not like staff to do, we had the steering committee meeting up at Green Top, the hunting and fishing place, one of the big stores, kind of like it's not a chain, but it's about the size of a big Gander Mountain. And in our meeting room, we had there was all kinds of crazy animal heads and things like that. And Gino and Ken Rice from USGS were in particular had a bear, right staring at the back of their head the whole meeting. It was pretty awesome. It's good stuff.
I'm assuming that's you, Wendy, in the other comments box, but that's a great suggestion. We've been talking with Pam out at Alligator River about getting out there to do kind of a blueprint training and Blueprint 2.0 update with refuge staff and potentially some of the Park Service folks out at Cape Hatteras, and we would love to work out a trip to Columbia to talk to you about that idea with Madam Mesquite while we're out there. So
that would be great. Is this Louise?
This is Hillary.
Hey, Hillary.
Louise is at the beach. She's on vacation right now. She's living the dream.
That would be wonderful. And I had talked to Louise about it a little bit already. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that would be great. And Madam Mesquite is very much into South Atlantic LCC and wanted to make that connection too. So, and they're closer to finishing their habitat management plan.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to pilot something like this, that might be a good refuge to focus on.
That sounds fabulous. Yeah, I'll be in touch for sure when Pam was going to do some digging and talk to Mike and talk to Scott and see who they thought would be appropriate and what times they were thinking. And so as soon as we get something lined up on the calendar, I'll definitely be in touch and see if we can't, or we can make a separate trip out too to make sure we get that done.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Hillary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I accidentally made, so the next activities will have it actually tagged with your name, so it'll be easier to put it in. I forgot to turn that setting on, so it was all anonymous in this one, but that way if you've got any requests, we'll make it easier to connect in. So awesome. Okay, looks like we've got lots of good ideas in there. Anyone need a little more time before we move on to the next piece? I'll have this in a couple minutes. All right. Next activity. These are some really good fodder and really good ideas. All right, so this is the next step piece here, and there may be some overlap, or you may have already said some things in some other places. But the idea here is, we talked a little bit about promoting the blueprint and sort of the education and learning about the blueprint. Now, same kind of questions, but related to removing some barriers to implementation. So think about, okay, you've got the blueprint, you've got these priorities. What are some of the challenges in actually, getting the incentives on the ground, actually acquiring the land, the management, the various actions you want to do? Think about some of those barriers to action you have in those blueprint places. And so this is why we have the sort of so slightly different questions. What would you like to do to help remove the barriers? What would you like staff to help with? What would you not like staff to do? So this is, again, the example, providing support with, grant writing, helping make connections with urban communities, address specific policy or sort of policy barriers you have that you maybe like to see your cooperative help that's in the way of doing stuff in blueprint areas. So those kind of things. So I'll give y'all, again, same routine as before, give y'all a few minutes to put down some ideas on those. These are great suggestions. These are all things we can start working on. Start folding in. right, so for folks on the phone, maybe go ahead and take a look through what's already suggested in those little bubbles, and then think about if there's something particularly important to you as an individual that you think might be missing. I gave you another little bit to take a look, and then we'll move on to the next activity. All right, excellent. Anyone need a little more time? Yeah. A few more, so I'll give you another second. All right, excellent feedback on that too. I'm going to stop here. Okay, so one last piece. Let me double check something. Okay, good. One last piece here just to see if there's anything else we haven't covered. Slightly different format here. I know at least a few already put some specific issues in some of the others, so we're all good. But just wanted to give you a chance here to list any other issues you'd like help with using the blueprint. So as we said before, we've got Hillary, Louise, myself, all of us sort of helping. So if there are any particular issues you'd like help with related to using the blueprint, this is one more a chance to kind of type that in, get it on the queue. It's fairly specific. And so I'll give you all a second to do that, and then we'll do a quick wrap-up in about a minute or so. In fact, maybe while you're thinking about that, I'm just going to do a quick sort of, we'll just sort of go person by person, just general overall thoughts on promoting and using the blueprint. So, things you as an individual you're thinking about. And maybe I'm going to go in alphabetical order. So I'll start with Beth. What are you thinking about next steps for promoting the blueprint?
Well, I think someone suggested on one of the bubbles that using success to get more success. I like that, promoting, with this fire thing, that's the first really big win. It made a difference in getting those funds. So I think using that as a stepping stone to really promote it would, I would think, prove very beneficial.
Awesome. What do you think, Dennis?
This is Dennis. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Very good. Thank you. Well, first of all, you guys are on the right track. These are great discussions. I think one of the things you do is you start looking at what are those priority places that are emerging from the network, and start hosting discussions specific to those. I really liked your comment or your example today about increased funding specifically for the South Atlantic Basin, the blueprint. Absolutely, but then there's another direction to go, and that is for this team to look at other existing investment centers and you and your partners have a meeting saying, what money are we spending now, and what additional funds do we need, all of it anchored in the blueprints. Where are we spending money now in the blueprint, particularly when it's a priority? And you guys are probably already on that track.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. We're starting to work on some of those pieces too, especially even around some of those opportunities where I think Janet and I were just actually talking about some of the Rivers and Trails programs and trying to be there where there hasn't been as much sort of strong proposals coming out of the Southeast through that, and let's be proactive and maybe bring some people together around logical places where these things interact within the blueprint.
I like that.
That's good. And I think it's got from some of the steering committee of trying to find these places where we can bring in a bigger tent to get things done in blueprint areas.
Very good.
All right, what do you think, Gino? I see you already got a little targeted outreach within NOAA on there.
Yeah, I think the outreach that you guys are doing is great, and I think really working with small groups or land trusts or conservation agencies who can actually do the on the ground implementation is going to be really key to this. So I just can promote continued use of that. From my own perspective, I just need to connect you better with parts of NOAA and trying to do that now.
Awesome. Thanks, Gina. Greg, what do you think?
I'm just listening. I don't really have any other brilliant ideas.
Yeah, you always have some good out-of-the-box ideas. How about Joanne?
This is Joanne Bax. I'm actually the regional botanist and vegicologist with the southern region of the Forest Service. And
awesome. Welcome.
I'm just catching up and learning about the LCCs and what's involved. So I'm just listening today.
Well, no problem. Always be prepared to be put on the spot. Do a lot of stuff as a cooperative, kind of from the ground up, and try to get as much of the feedback coming from some of these discussions. So, welcome.
Joanna, since there wasn't so much the general recap of the LCC and its mission and the blueprint and how it was developed on this web forum, if you feel like you want some more background information to get up to speed, feel free to get in touch, and we'd be happy to chat with you more offline.
Great, thanks.
All right. John, what are you thinking?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, my mind's racing around different directions, but if I can bring any sense to it, it has something to do with this bridging of what the staff is working on and developing the products, the blueprint, and moving into the implementation phase. There's still that huge leap of engaging either at the local level or at the agency level or across the agency in a meaningful way, progress, and finding that progress and finding those opportunities. And we're picking at things here and shooting darts at the wall, trying to see what seems to resonate with everybody. But I think it starts with the staff voicing the opinion that the members, like their steering committee members, take a more active role within their respective agencies or organizations to challenge a small subset of their staff to work with the cooperative to develop a product or a tool or a implementation project, and in doing so support their staff to carve out time and give them the opportunity to work on that. I mean, I want to work more actively with the cooperative, but one of my earlier bubbles said I need to engage with the South Atlantic LCC tools and staff to find meaningful products and to move forward. So I find myself caught in that trap of just doing my day job, and the South Atlantic LCC is just a secondary thought, and I'd like to reverse that. So there's my ramble. If you can extract anything from that, that's where I'd like to see our steering committee members maybe play a more active role in promoting it within their own agencies, promoting what we have and how are we going to utilize the blueprint and kind of, where the rubber rubber meets the road kind of stuff.
Yeah, sounds good. So promoting it not just in the, promoting the blueprint itself, but freeing up people's time to be part of some of these efforts.
Yeah, something to that effect. Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, Neil, I saw you jumping in a little bit late there. I don't know how much catching up you need. We were talking about just roles in promoting and implementing the blueprint, and you probably heard from all the various other folks. We're sort of talking about making that shift from having the product and still going to keep working on improving the science piece, but moving more onto the, getting it used and promoting it side.
Yeah, I am very interested in that because I'm trying to do the same thing with the ecological framework, which we're hoping to update with some newer land cover data. So I'm sort of just listening, like someone else said, just soaking it in. I'm sorry I don't have much to contribute, but I'm interested in what you're doing.
No problem. Yeah, that's great. All right, Vern, what do you think?
Well, this is real exciting, and I think as Hillary and Louise get out, they're going to find very quickly that having a couple of different messages for different audiences is going to be very important. I think that what we're hearing on the call is we get people that are interested, that are seeing this for the first time, and we need that entry-level message. And at the same time, we've got a lot of steering committee partners that are looking for content. They're finally saying, oh, I see how I can use it. And then as this moves forward, we're probably going to be hearing from other folks that see success here and say, well, we've got other opportunities out there. So we're going to have multiple messages, and I think they'll figure that out pretty quickly.
Cool. Thanks, Vern. And Wendy.
I think the main thing, which I think you are already doing an excellent job, especially Hillary with her emails that go out, is just communicate, and as someone already mentioned, highlight the successes and highlight the progress as this project that was funded. I'm just thrilled to hear that progresses on. As we progress on with this, if we can start tying in some efforts with citizen science to try and get maybe even the public and more local areas involved where they feel like they are contributing in some way, somehow link some of these efforts to citizen science efforts, because that seems to be a big buzzword for a lot of agencies right now, to get some of the work done on the field and to bring in more public appreciation of the resource. So like they're contributing to the resource.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. All right, got it. Cool. All right, well, thanks a lot, everybody. Any other closing comments or questions before we close out? Lots of good feedback, great discussions and thinking.
Hey, Rua, just one last thought.
Yeah.
We had a pretty good turnout today for the third Thursday webinar, but it seemed to be a little on the lean side.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's telling us anything or not. I mean, you can reflect on that for quite a while, but I know this is a bad time of year for a lot of folks because, people out in the field, and it's the time to get work done. So, in many respects, in our profession, so it might just be people are scattered very widely right now, but maybe just reporting to the steering committee on what we see as maybe a trend of lack of engagement, or whatever you want to call it. So that's just a personal observation.
Yeah, it's a good thing to think about. We have seen similar dips over the summer last time with the web forums too, when everyone's out in the field. But one of the things I can do, I know there are a few people that really wanted to be on this that I'm doing follow-ups afterwards with, some folks from Open Space Institute and others. But I'll maybe we can go back and check with a few people that typically are on these calls and see if there was something about this particular topic. Because usually we get about 40 some odd people on these. So I'll maybe do a spot check with some folks that are typically on but weren't particularly on this one, and see what's going on. Because it's a little lighter than we usually get. So not that y'all's awesomeness doesn't make up for it. It's about quality, not quantity. But yeah, I'll check up on that, John. Try to dig a little deeper. All right. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. And he'll be taking all this sort of information, feedback, and discussion, feeding in that promotion plan, and then working on how we as a sort of a staff strategize what we do.
And real quick, Rua, I may do just a quick preview of next month.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, that's no worries. Our July Web Forum, we're going to be having Mary Conley, who's the Southeast Marine Conservation Director with the Nature Conservancy. So if you're at all interested in marine issues, this could be a super interesting talk. She's going to be talking about the value of marine assessments and conserving important resources, particularly as new and expanding uses are putting additional pressure on the marine environment. So she's particularly going to be highlighting the South Atlantic Bight Marine Assessment Project, which was undertaken in part with support from your cooperative. That basically extends from Cape Charles, Virginia, down to the Florida Keys, utilizing existing data sources to create regional spatial data layers of seafloor habitats, coastal ecosystems, and migratory species. So she's going to be giving us a project overview and highlighting some of the primary analysis as well as the mapping products and data gaps coming out of that. So it'll be a really good update on that South Atlantic Bight Marine Assessment. So hopefully we'll see you virtually next month as well.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Anything else we need to cover on the call, Hillary?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, everyone. That should be the next web forum. Should be a lot of fun. That's done a lot of really cool, made a lot of cool progress on that South Atlantic Bight Marine Assessment. So lots of good stuff to talk about next week as well. So hope to see you then.
Thank you all.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.